Hi everybody and welcome. My name is Mia Ekdahl and I am the Head of Communication at Sahlgrenska Science Park. I'm also delighted to be the project leader for the initiative Health Innovation West, which we're here to talk about today. And next to me is Magnus Björsne, who I'm also delighted to be joined by. Magnus is the CEO of AstraZeneca BioVentureHub, and he's also the chairperson of Health Innovation West steering group. So Magnus, what have we got lined up today?
A lot, Mia, and hi everyone. So we're actually streaming live from the GoCo Arena studios in Gothenburg, and we have a really packed program ahead of us. So we will introduce Health Innovation West and talk about what it actually is. We will also share a market report that has been issued by Health Innovation West. And finally, we will take a look at what has happened within this initiative and what is about to happen next.
And to help us with all of that, we are joined in the studio here today by a number of guests who are all actively engaged in Health Innovation West. And later in the program, Kristina Lagerstedt, who is the CEO of the life science company 1928 Diagnostic, and Erik Gatenholm, who is CEO of Cellink, will be joining us for an open and honest discussion of what are the prerequisites for building and keeping successful companies in life science in Sweden.
And being live, pros and cons. One of the cons is that you can, and pros as well, is that you can actually chat with us. So use the chat function in Zoom to get in contact with us, and there will be ample of time in the end to discuss whatever questions may come up. So Mia, what is actually Health Innovation West then?
You're asking me?
Yes.
Oh, well, I thought I could ask you, but we turned to a number of our steering group and working group committee members to answer that question. So play the video.
Health Innovation West is the collaboration between different sectors, with the academic sector, the clinical sector, with the hospital, but mostly all the companies that are in the region, and they're coming together on the basis of a lot of common ground.
To me, Health Innovation West is an opportunity for the health and life science systems in Gothenburg and West Sweden to show what we really can do.
We need to work together to unlock new solutions and to increase innovation within life science.
Is it important? Yes, of course. It's important to all of us, this cluster. Why? Well, due to the fact that it has what it takes to make the western region of Sweden into the leading life science region.
Oh, it's really important to make the awareness of everything that is really going on here.
This is important because we must realize that we compete on a global scale when it comes to keeping our established companies here, attracting new companies to establish in the region, and in competition for talent.
Life science is really a knowledge-based industry, and the fact that we have a lot of life science companies brings intelligence to the region.
To me, it is an important arena where I meet other industry leaders, academia, entrepreneurs, and the public sector. We share our knowledge, we learn from each other, and together we drive innovation to meet global healthcare challenges.
This is not just a nice to have. For me, this is a precondition for success.
And if we play our cards right, we can be the best place in the world for life science.
Thanks. In other words, it's all about joining forces between academia, caregivers, companies big and small, to really further expand life sciences in Sweden.
Yeah, and behind Health Innovation West, you'll find all the major players in life science in this region. So that are like University of Gothenburg, Chalmers University of Technology, Region Västra Götaland, Sahlgrenska University Hospital, AstraZeneca, Getinge, GoCo, Sahlgrenska Science Park, and many, many more.
And besides being creative ourselves, we have actually looked into other successful innovation clusters. We visited the Boston cluster. For a couple of days, we have looked at the Öresund region. We have looked at what is happening up in Stockholm. And it's all about combining the power of academia with industry and all others that actually are engaged in healthcare. And this is an area which is actually changing a lot. So we need to work together in very different ways.
And it's important to say that Health Innovation West is not about building more physical clusters. There are other initiatives that are doing the physical work. But to quote you, Magnus, you quite often say that life science or any kind of activity is a contact sport. And what we need to do is to connect and utilize the power of the more than 11,000 people that works in life science only in West Sweden today, plus in companies, and plus the 485 companies that are active in the region. The public sector actors, the universities, all of the science parks, and other industries that are approaching life science through technology and digitalization.
And Mia, if you have seen as much as some of us have done, you may ask yourself, why will we succeed this time? And when I ask myself that question, I think that the timing is correct. If we look on, for the first time we have a life science strategy in place. We have tons of investments being made, not at least where we are today with GoCo Health Innovation City. We have Sahlgrenska Life coming up. We have all the expansion that goes on Lindholmen. And we all know that some people used to say, if you are 2 steps ahead of everyone else, you are a genius. If you're 1 step ahead, you are very intelligent. But if you're only 1/2 step ahead, you are probably successful. And I think now is the time to do this.
I completely agree, Magnus. And what we really want to point out is that when the initiators of Health Innovation West discussed why should we commit to such an initiative, we agreed on 3 clear goals. And we will repeat those goals several times today because it's important. First of all, to attract talent, international talent to the region. Secondly, to stimulate cross-sectorial and cross-functional innovation, and to attract venture capital and new investments and establishment in life science to Sweden.
So, in essence, all the stars are lined up. And that said, I think it's still important to remember that it's up to all of us that are engaged in life science to actually make it happen. And I think by doing what we're doing now, it's all about harnessing the power of togetherness.
Yeah. And some people have been asking themselves and us and others, how does Health Innovation West fit alongside GoCo Health Innovation City and Sahlgrenska Life, 2 enormous big initiatives that are also focused on cluster? Well, what do you think, Magnus?
I think it's a very good question, and we can actually get some help answering that, at least from one perspective, and that is by inviting Marie Uddenmyr, who is one of our colleagues at GoCo Arena. So please, Marie, join us.
Thank you. Hi, Marie. Great to have you here. Tell us, if we start with where you work, what is GoCo?
Well, GoCo Health Innovation City is a new city center located close to AstraZeneca here in Mölndal, and it's developed by Next Step and Vectura, and we'll have the capacity here to have 350 companies, about 7,000 people, to share ideas and to collaborate and work within health innovation.
Sounds quite cool to me. How does GoCo fit into Health Innovation West?
Well, GoCo is an active member within Health Innovation West, and the way I see it, we can provide a new fantastic state-of-the-art of arena, a place for people to meet and to collaborate. And this is just a complement to an already existing, place that is here already. But if we're going to build the region stronger, we need to work together, and I think that Health Innovation West is perfect for that.
Thank you. And I agree with you, and in looking at Sahlgrenska Life and Wallenberg Center and a lot of other big initiatives around the region, I do believe that we'll get stronger together. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for letting us being here in your studio today.
Thank you so much, Mia and Magnus.
And in preparation for Health Innovation West, besides looking into our own strength, we took a closer look at the National Life Science Strategy, which of course is very well aligned with what we're aiming for here. And Jenny Nordborg, who is the Swedish government's national coordinator for life science, she gave us a very valuable view of how it all fits together.
Health Innovation West is really a way of joining forces for future life sciences to build Sweden's strength, not only now, what we need for better health and competitiveness today, but also for the future. It's important because so many actors need to work together towards a joint vision, towards a joint target, really to attract new talents, new investment, but also to be able to work on complex areas and complex problems together. Different clusters like Health Innovation West are really important to Sweden to showcase the Swedish offer within life sciences. Really, these are really landmarks where we get also not only a Swedish and a Nordic vision, but more of a global impact on what we do together and what we can offer today for better health and competitiveness, but also for the future.
So that was Jenny Nordborg, and I think reflecting upon what has happened, I mean, for the first time we actually have a national life science strategy in Sweden. And it's a unique opportunity to actually change things. And we all know who have been engaged in strategy work that it's one thing to articulate the strategy, it's another thing to implement it. And that's again where I think this idea about joining up becomes so important, because it's, in the end, it will be up to many of us, you and us, to actually make it happen.
Yeah, and I've been thinking about this, and we're not the first ones in the world. We're just inspired by others. But if you look into this region, West Sweden, if you look at the mobility industry and ICT industry, I think we can all agree that they have found a way to be globally successful by working closely together. Well, besides looking at the national, the alignment with the national life science strategy, we also did a market analysis that essentially forms the basis of the work that we're carrying out in the future for Health Innovation West. So it's time to look a bit closer into that. And remember again the 3 goals for Health Innovation West: to attract talent, to attract capital and investments, and to stimulate more cross-functional and cross-sector collaboration. So for us to know where to start to talk and where to start to work, we commissioned a market analysis. And the purpose of that was to give us a fact-based, updated overview of what does the life science cluster in West Sweden look like today. We wanted to identify potential areas of excellence where we can become world-class by leveraging the regional strongholds and opportunities from an industry perspective. And thirdly, to identify experience, challenges, and improvement potential. So with all of these things, we asked the Triathlon Group to deliver the analysis, and Jonas Kvillberg has joined us here today to tell us more about the report and the conclusions and, of course, the recommendations. Welcome, Jonas.
So, and hi to all of you following this event online. My name is Jonas Kvillberg, and I'm partner and responsible for the Triathlon Health Tech practice. And we were given this intriguing task to perform this analysis, as Mia mentioned. And I should also say initially that normally when we present this, we spend a little bit more time to put it all into context. But today I will give you the short executive version to give some background to what has led up to certain events now taking place. And I should also say that I'm very glad to be here after doing this work and see what is happening now and making this available for the wider world. Mia mentioned shortly about the purpose of this work, so I will not repeat that today. And as you can understand, this is a quite multi-dimensional purpose. And how do you take on this task? And what we did was to really look at the facts and be data-driven in this, because I like data. Strengths. Another important part of this work has been the interviews with people. We talked to over 37 people working in both the public and the private domain. And including this, we also talked to representatives on executive level with more or less all the life science companies present here in the region to understand more about what are the strategic priorities and what are the areas that the industry would like to find collaboration within. And I should also humbly say, as you can understand, that this is This is our view and contribution to the work based on the input that we received from the interviews and the data that we have collected. And it might be considered as controversial in some parts what we say and propose, but maybe more importantly what we don't say. But our attitude from the beginning has been if this work can lead this work forward and open up for discussion, no one would be happier than us. So with that said, if one is to understand the needs of the industry, it is quite natural to start looking on how the industry looked like today. And therefore we provided a mapping of the current life science industry. You should have the slide up here now. And in total, we identified over 480 companies, which in total employs around 11,000 people working in West Sweden. And I should say also that these companies are only the direct employees in these companies. And if you look at this graph, you see how these companies and employees are distributed between different subsectors and to identify where we have these industrial strongholds. And you can see that we have a couple of areas here with a high density of employees. First of all being the healthcare facility products, and that includes the personal and wound care, but also equipment for healthcare with companies like Mölnlycke, Essity and Getinge. And then, of course, we have the pharmaceutical domain with AstraZeneca, of course, as a driver with over 2,000 employees. Another important stronghold, as you know about, is the implantable devices and the whole industry that has emerged after Brånemark's early discoveries, as well as other industry, for example, in tissue and cell engineering companies like Vitrolife and Cellink. And if one is to highlight the strongholds of the industry today, I would say what you see here with all these large industrial companies is one of the major strongholds that we have, given that these companies provide a critical capability for scale-up and industrialization of innovations just around the corner. And with that also, we have a large pool of talented people that either can start new companies or work or support companies in different ways. But what makes the industry really interesting and exciting is the combination between these large companies and innovative startup companies that we have. And what we did was to map the startups working in life science. And here you see the distribution between different sectors, or you can say different certain key terms when we map the companies according to these terms. And you see on the left side on this picture, you see that we have a high density of companies working in the digital health domain, but also many companies in new drug development, in diagnostics, in oncology, machine learning, and AI. So in order to respect the time schedule of today, I have talked about the industry now. Another, of course, key element for life science is the science. And we did a lot of quantitative digging into that field as well. But I will not go deep into that now, but what we can see and conclude on is certainly that we have a lot of great science in West Sweden with prominent teams that are world-class also by international standard in certain areas. And you see them here on the right side of the slide. And if we combine that with what we have as other more general strongholds in terms of the strong collaboration between the university and healthcare, as well as the high-quality clinical research that we have that has been seen in national evaluations, as well as the very presence of the one of Europe's largest university hospital. We can certainly say that all the elements are there for a world-class life science cluster. But then the question is whether we utilize this in the best possible way. And that brings us to the next area. Because we didn't only want to capture the good stuff in this analysis, we also wanted to pinpoint and be very transparent about the challenges that people experience when working in the system. And when we talked to people last year, there were a number of common themes that came up during the conversations. And I should also say that much is already happening to address these challenges. So I will not go deep into that now, but I just wanted to share a couple of quotes that quite nicely capture what was the main themes when we talk to people about the challenges. And the first one reflects what is experienced as a desire to keep the industry on arm's length distance. And this has been repeatedly mentioned by many companies. And of course, we have a lot of great collaboration between the private and the public sector today, but it is not where it could be. And one common challenge, and what is well known by many that has been living in the system for quite some time, is what we see as the challenge to get access to the healthcare for testing and research for the companies. And that could be to test new innovations in a clinical setting or initiating clinical trials, or to access the strong register data that we have. And related to this, another thing that was commonly mentioned was what many experience as the lack of the clear entry points to the healthcare. And many describe a situation of being tossed around between department and person, with the result that one finally gets tired and seek partnerships elsewhere. But I should also say that also goes for many large companies, because it is not easy as an entrepreneur or researcher to get hold of the right person working in these large industrial companies. So it takes two to tango. The second quote that I will share with you is related to a common theme that many miss this clear cluster overview of West Sweden and life science and do not know about who is active here, what support is present, and what opportunities exist for different collaborations and partnerships. And the thing is that we have a lot of great infrastructure and support in West Sweden, but the problem is that too many people do not know about what's available. And then I think me and Magnus mentioned this initially about the timing, and this has also been a common theme during the conversation, that people really want to see action now and unite under a common vision to do something. And that was very good, nicely captured actually by one of the interviewees, who you can read it on the screen here, basically saying that if I will go to Lindholmen with an idea about a self-driving car, then people will come from all sides and want to chip in. But we haven't had that vision up to this point to unite under this common goal. And this is all what Health Innovation West is about, to address these challenges, and much is already happening that you will see moving on here. So we asked ourselves, what could be this self-driving car of life science in West Sweden? And this is very much about to find these areas where we can become world-class, and to find the areas where we see a mutual cross-sector potential and interest between actors to do exciting and cool stuff together. But we started here in this work from the industrial need, because you need industry to enable a real cross-sector collaboration. But also where we have this opportunity to leverage what we have in terms of strongholds, elements, strong science, infrastructure, or other initiatives that we can build upon. And I should also say that what we search for is areas that is not only relevant from a local perspective, but also from a wider perspective, from a national standpoint, but also from a Nordic perspective, to ensure that we enable the critical mass. So after talking to a lot of people and digging into the data, 5 main areas emerge as we see as potential areas of excellence in which we can become world-class in West Sweden in life science. Some of you have seen these areas before, and some of you have not. So I will go through each of them and describe why we selected these areas. And the first one being material science and infection control. And this includes all the know-how and presence we have within biomaterials, within implants, within advanced wound care and material science and infection control in general. And what we can say here for sure is that we have a stronghold both in the industry and in the academic world, and where we have a joint need to do stuff together and find new innovations, which has become very evident now during the ongoing pandemic. And what is good with this opportunity is that we don't need a major competence build-up in the field of material science and infection control. Rather, this one is more about to more efficiently connect people and to communicate what we have, what we need, but also to enable access to healthcare and testing in clinical settings. The next one is regenerative medicine and ATMP, advanced therapeutic medical products. A key driver here is, of course, AstraZeneca strategic priority, but also substantial investment now being made in the area of regenerative medicine and related areas. And with substantial, I mean substantial to really build something here. Even though this might not be an academic stronghold today, we certainly have teams in related area to this field, for example, within mitochondrial DNA. But this is one opportunity we have to really take a position long term to build something in a very interesting high potential area. Then we have advanced drug delivery, and that might come as a surprise for many and not something that we traditionally claim as a stronghold today here in West Sweden. But the reason why we added this to our list of potential areas is that there is a strong need to find new ways to deliver these next generation therapeutics to the right place in the body, but also the area as such as being a highly multidisciplinary field where we need to connect actors for different areas of expertise. And what many of you maybe don't know is that we have a strong research facility, the Formula X Industrial Research Center, which is a 100 million investment that already after a few years from start has generated a lot of world-class science and already drawing international attention. And then we have two more technology-oriented areas, the first one being digital health and AI. And yes, everyone claims that they're good in this area, and it might be broadly defined at this point, but when we talk to people, whoever we talk to, this area is top priority for all of the companies, and we need to find external expertise outside the walls of the company. And given what we have in the ICT sector and what's happening on Lindholmen, as well as the initiatives taking place, for example, the Chalmers AI initiatives, we really have a potential here in certain applications to do great stuff. Which leads us into the last and final area, which is medical imaging. And this is largely attributed to what we have at the Imaging and Intervention Center at Sahlgrenska, BioVentureHub, where we have this cutting-edge infrastructure for imaging, which up to this point has been less accessible for research for different reasons. And I think that this is one of the areas we have as a short-term possibility now that we also have a new research lab in place to take a position on short term and take a position in times of precision medicine. So those were the 5 areas that we highlighted during our analysis last year. And it's possible, as you understand, there are interdependencies between these areas, and you can slice the pie in different ways. And you will see that that has happened as well in the work ahead. So to summarize, much has been said in short time, I know that. But we can certainly say that we have a lot of great elements necessary to become a world-class life science cluster in Sweden. But we can also see that the ecosystem is not leveraged in the best possible way. And there are challenges that we must address. Another encouraging key takeaway from the work is that what we see as a perceived true openness to really come together now and do something. And that also means that there is a built-up momentum for execution to deliver results. And one can say that the work that we did can be seen as the easy part to find these areas. And now it's very much about to connect actors and execute and get people in the same room, or at least in the same meetings nowadays, and find the concrete projects and start to deliver results and execute both on short term, but also to enable the long-term elements that we need to have a successful cluster here in West Sweden. This is the final slide, and I would like to leave you with this. This is credit to one of the smart people we talked to last year. And I think this is a very good guiding star for the work because we cannot be best at everything. But imagine if Western Sweden was known for the region where new evidence is generated and where new innovation is adopted. And I think that is something we can strive for in this work. So, thank you very much.
No, I'm pushing you over here.
Yep. I'll bring my...
So, thank you. I have read this report, and it is indeed comprehensive. And the first question is very easy. Where do people get hold of the report?
I will have to address that question to Mia, but I'm sure it's available at Sahlgrenska Science Park's website.
And on the Health Innovation West website.
And on the Health Innovation website. So that was the easy question. The somewhat more tricky question is when you read this, you realize that there are other areas of huge strength in the region and in Sweden as a whole, but those are hardly mentioned. So what is the reason? Take oncology as an example. It's not part of the 5 strength areas, although there is a lot of great science going on, especially at Sahlgrenska and GEO on that area. So what's your comment on that?
Yeah, that's a great question and a common question as well throughout this work. And maybe just one first comment is, as I recall it, there was someone who asked us to select certain areas. But then, to be more on a serious point, that the areas that we select are the areas that has come out from the conversations primarily with the industry. Yes. Then, of course, we have a lot of strongholds in the region, and oncology being one of them, with a lot of research funding allocated to the research in the region. But this is also very much about if you are to drive change, at some point you need to select and start doing something and deliver results. And also, another important point to make is the areas that we highlight here, they are more broad in character and a platform for collaboration. And we have not chosen the specific, for example, therapeutic areas or indications. And what do I know? Maybe there will be an oncology project within here in medical imaging. And
no, I think you're touching upon something very important. It is that these are actually agnostic to science areas when it comes to medicine itself. But I think it's when you read the report, it's evident that it is to some extent, I think, perceived as being industry-driven, which I think was needed. On the other hand, I would love to see a similar report from the perspective of academia. And when you will join those two together, I think that would be very, very interesting.
Yeah,
and of course, academia has been part of this, but you see what I mean? It's somewhat a different perspective. So Jonas, you have done a great job, and thank you very, very much. And for you out there, the chat is awfully empty, and it's I mean, whatever ideas, even complaints, shoot them in so we can get an opportunity to discuss it. One area that was mentioned in this report is regenerative medicine, which is really a topic which is high on everybody's agenda today. And within AstraZeneca, we have chosen to locate our efforts in regenerative medicine in Sweden, which I think is very good news. And it is part of the life science strategy, and there is currently a lot of discussions ongoing with respect to building capacity in regenerative medicine and ATMP. And imagine if we could join forces to really secure that this happens in Sweden. It would be fantastic. It will be a big proportion of future medicine. So, Mia, what has happened so far?
Thank you. Now you've heard Jonas present the areas highlighted in the report and also the challenges. You remember we commissioned the report also to find out about challenges. And the reactions from the report since it was first presented to a smaller group back in the autumn and to now has been massive. But even more so, the action has been massive. And I think that's worth pointing to. And we've created a number of working groups and reports have been initiated, marketing activities and so forth. And they reflect both on the challenges and opportunities and on these areas of strength. And Again, I'd like to say that we're trying to address common areas of interest and strength aligned to the overall goals, to attract talent, to stimulate the cross-functional and cross-sectorial innovation, and to attract capital and investment to the region. And again, that sport analogy of yours, Magnus, the contact sport, that's what it's all about, right? People
2
need,
meters.
yeah, digital contact sport. People need to meet, and they get to know each other to make magic happen. And while we do that, we also do good to our region, to the nation, and of course for patients and society in the longer run. And my colleague Magnus, another Magnus Bergendahl, who works
This is really 2 people, Magnus B.
Yeah, Magnus B.
It causes a lot of problems, so I will actually leave now, and Magnus can join
we have
instead.
another Magnus B joining us. Magnus B. Bergendahl from Sahlgrenska Science Park is coordinating one of those groups, which we call Vägen in i vården in Swedish. Magnus, what does Vägen in i vården mean?
It means a lot to this region, and the reason why it does so, I will soon tell you. Thank you, Mia, for introduction. We just recently learned that there are more than 400 companies and organizations within life science in this region. And on an annual basis, there are hundreds of tests, verification, and trials performed by this organization and companies. A good part of those are done in this very region by skilled organization and dedicated people. But still, there are interests in having that opportunities with tests to increase. Without those dedicated people, it wouldn't be possible to make these tests opportunities to come alive. But still, there's a crushing common denominating factor when we're asking companies and organizations about how we could improve the region's attractiveness when it comes to life science. And what they say is that, what about we could increase the testing opportunities? And not only all types of testing, but what is really standing out is that it doesn't matter if you ask a big company or a small company. In the early front steps of innovations, what all matters is the speed. And in this case, what's equal to speed is the access to local testing opportunities. To make companies more attractive, companies more competitive, to make patients get the best possible healthcare in the world, in technical wise, but also to make this region more attractive for other companies and people and competencies to come aboard. So it's even so that when we make deep interviews with key functions in this organization, it says that having test opportunities locally is even so important that it's one factor that plays a part when they decide where to place the development offices, where to place the headquarters of the companies and organizations. And that is something that we, of course, should react upon. So we did. And Health Innovation West is proudly presenting here today that we formed a working group on the topic Vägen in i vården. That is all about focusing and getting people together to take the demand side of testing opportunity with the supply side and make them meet. The format is still open. It might be opposite attractive Dragon's Den, or it might be a network organization that actually brings people closer to each other. But what we will not do is to reinvent the wheel. There's a lot of good organizations doing these kind of activities already. And instead, the activity will be based on standing on those shoulders, those giant shoulders, to reach even further or wider. And we have had flying start. I'm proud to say that in this work group, as of today, we have, from the business perspective, AstraZeneca HealthWorks, that is tightly coupled to this topic. We also have Johnson & Johnson, who is really standing in the forefront of pushing this and making the platform better and stronger. We also have the Läkemedelsindustriföretagarna, the LIF, both from the West region side and the national level connected to this work group. It doesn't stop there. As we talked about the demand meeting the supply here, we also have from the private healthcare sector represented by the Sahlgrenska hospital. And of course, what would we be without having the region's most promising and biggest hospital of all, Sahlgrenska Universitetssjukhuset, taking part of this work group. And from the regional side, we also boosted it with help of the Innovationsplattformen and as well as the Gothia Forum, who is running a majority of the clinical trials in this region today. And in the middle, of course, there is Sahlgrenska Science Park with its task to join forces in this part. So if you are an organization that are interested in testing opportunities, or if you are an organization that are interested in performing tests and verification in clinical trials, pick up the telephone, text us, call us, mail us, join us. This is not an action of a single person. It's an act of a community, of a region standing up to make it stronger and more attractive. Thank you.
Thank you, Magnus. When I listen to you, it really gives me goosebumps. I mean, if we can, I think when I joined pharma, there was a lot of interactions between health providers and industry. And then we had a dip. It was not even possible to offer a cup of coffee because it could be perceived as something else than coffee.
Yep.
And now, if we look forward, I mean, patient centricity is one aspect of the coin. The other one is what we talk about, sector convergence. The products of tomorrow will be about combining medicines with ICT, with sensor technology, you name it. And we need to work together.
Yes.
And I think when you talk about this, vägen in, we need to find an English. If anybody in the chat can find a good way to explain vägen in i vården in English, that would be great. Sorry for the Skånish there. So a big thank you, and I wish you all luck. This is so important.
Thank you.
And another area that was mentioned is healthcare-associated infections as one of the strongholds. And Iris Örn, a friend of ours from Business Region Gothenburg, who is also part of Health Innovation West, have been looking into this area. So Iris, please join us. So tell us about what you have been up to, Iris.
So how do I start? I think that we identified that this was a key area, a strength for the sector, and then we really wanted to look deeper into it to actually understand which are the researchers working within infection control, the companies, the infrastructure that we have. And I think that the aim from the beginning was actually to, how can I explain it? So we get so many questions about impact investors. And infection control is an area that is very much related to sustainability, Agenda 2030, the SDG goals. So for me, I have to say I really enjoy this part. And then also we wanted to, kind of strengthen our brand in an area where I think West Sweden actually excel. Another aspect of the report was that there are so many companies, researchers working within this area, but I don't see that there are not really contacts, collaboration between everybody. So we hope now that with this report, it might be easier for everybody to find each other. Another area that was important here is that there are organizations like UN, UNDP, the World Bank, looking for Swedish solutions to make an impact in developing countries. And I think here that we have a lot to share and a lot to give. So that was actually the principle. I can show a little bit, please, if you allow me. So I want, and I am not the one on the picture. So I will just show you a little bit how it is built. You can download it easier later on. So we wanted, as you can see here, we identify which are the universities and the departments that are active in the area of infection control. And as I said, we look at it mainly with focus on life sciences. Of course, we have companies, and that's something that we have seen now during this COVID-19. We have textile companies that have been producing masks. We have automotive companies that have been producing ventilators and so on. But right now in this report, the focus was mainly life sciences. So here you see some of the universities that are active in the field. We identify over 90 research projects that had some connection with infection control, antibiotic resistance. This is the infrastructure that is present in the healthcare within the region, from biobanks with COVID-19 samples, and here we actually found over 60 companies active and with some relevance for it, and at the end you will find a list, but even you will see some of the main organizations in Sweden and the region active. But the report can be downloaded on this page.
Super, Iris. Thank you. Mia,
thank you so
please
much,
join
Iris.
us.
Thank you. And I try to keep COVID safe here. I think if you just disconnect this, and we will share this download link as well on the Health Innovation West website and in the chat so that you can find it. Thank you so much, Iris. The next group that we're going to present combines two of the recommended focus areas from the report in a true sector convergence fashion, which is great in this region. So digital health and AI, if you remember from Jonas' presentation, and medical imaging. The idea came from AstraZeneca, who said, why don't you just combine them into one group? And the idea of using AI for image annotation is used in many industries, and we're quite good at mobility as well. So experts from both of these fields have joined forces, and the first work group is on its way. And I've been joined by Anders Hyltander, who is life science strategist at Sahlgrenska University Hospital. I think, Anders, we have you via link, right?
Yes, I can hear and see you perfectly well. Can you hear me?
We can hear you, Anders.
Excellent.
So tell me, Anders, first of all, from your perspective, but also from a Health Innovation West perspective, I should say you also sit in the steering group for Health Innovation West. Why is this group important?
Well, it's important from a couple of perspectives. The first of which I would say is that it will bring people together. It will connect people. People from the hospital side, clinicians, scientists from the Sahlgrenska Academy, from Chalmers University, and also scientists, engineers, technicians, business people from various companies. And as you know, we've already touched on that issue. When people meet, well, things start to happen. And beneficial from, the AI and medical imaging is a real hot topic with great potential for improvement in healthcare, that is also for the patients, but also for the companies and for the life science development. And the third comment on that, I think it's also important for the Health Innovation West in as much now we are on the move, so to speak. We are now starting to deliver. And I think this is only the beginning. It's the warm-up lap, you might say, before the real competition begins. I think this various initiatives, one of which is now the AI and the imaging, medical imaging, hopefully it will create curiosity, it will create some dust, and hopefully other companies, people, organizations will see that and realize that, whoops, now they are on the move in the Gothenburg area, and we better join this movement.
And Anders, for those who don't know, apart from, of course, being linked up to the mobility industry, which is great, and of course we have companies like AstraZeneca, Antaros Medical, and several others who are in the life science space. You've got some pretty cool stuff at Sahlgrenska University Hospital as well. Can you just explain that very briefly?
All right, I spent the whole afternoon going through that. Yes, we have some really cool stuff. We have that Jonas reported, mentioned in his report, the BOIC, the Center for Imaging and Intervention. And it's a really cool place. Yes, it's one of a kind. I don't think it has any resemblance anywhere in Europe, actually. And it's a huge, really huge, multi-hundred million investment that the western region of Sweden decided to position at Sahlgrenska University Hospital. And to some little bit teasing or teaser now, it's on its way also to get a brand new PET MRI equipment. So yes, and it was also a part of the triathlon report that there is a potential for scientific work within the BOIC that has perhaps not been utilized 100%, and we are going to change that.
It's so great to hear, and I know that Chalmers University, Gothenburg University,
yes,
and the companies on both kind of industries are really keen to find out and how to collaborate closer to the hospital. So thank you so much for this, and I know you have a date, so we're about to send out an invitation. So if any of you listening to this are not already included in that discussion, text us, email us, and we will make sure that you have the opportunity to join. Thank you so much, Anders.
Thank you.
And where do we go? Where do we go from here?
No. The chat has been suddenly coming to life. And
Great.
if you know your chronology of rock and roll, there was a group called AC/DC.
Yeah.
And one of the names for Vägen in i vården is Highway to Health. And I think that I like that. So thank you for all who have contributed. We probably need more suggestion, even though this one is close to my heart. So we have 3 great working groups ongoing, which is all about combining strengths in both the hospital setting, academia, and industry. And I think it's really fascinating now to see how people are joining forces to make things happen. And if you have ideas which all is about combining the power of industry with academia, with healthcare, let us know. And we talk about the region, but this is really for the benefit of Sweden. We can't afford to be regional and parochialistic in how we approach innovation and development of life science. So please help us. Mia, where are we now?
How do they get in touch with us?
Yes, how do they get in touch with us?
How do you get in touch? Well, first of all, get in touch with each other, right? Because as we said, this is a contact sport. But what we're here for is to connect you all. The website, healthinnovationwest.se, is a good way. There is also a LinkedIn group, Health Innovation West, which you can request to become a member of. And there is an email address on the website where you can get in touch. And all of this is part of that 4th working group, because if you remember from Jonas, how do I find the front door? How do I find others? And Jamie Smith, who is leading that working group, is also the producer behind today's event. So thank you for that. And there is another cool thing. Remember we said, how do you find each other? So we have explored this a bit, and we've been inspired by Chalmers and the University of Gothenburg and Professor Torbjörn Lund, who's developed a tool called for Math Bio. And we're sort of looking at that together with the company Smarter to produce an AI-powered tool to find each other. And there is a glimpse of the idea, which you can see here. It's not yet done, but watch this space, and we hope to be able to present it a bit closer in a not too distant future. So, I mean, there's so much to do, and I'm wondering, when on earth are we going to do all of this, and can I ever go to sleep at night? Or is there an app for that, or what?
No, well, there's a lot of apps for sleep disorders, actually. But talking about sleep, there was an article in New York Times very recently that talked about, I mean, we are all facing COVID at the moment. Hopefully it's soon over. But they talked about the phenomena which is called bedtime revenge procrastination. And that is when people stay up late, like you do, Mia, because they haven't simply been fed with enough impressions during the day. So by staying up later, you hope to experience more, but the result is that you get tired. Anyway, what's next, Mia?
Well, yeah, as I said, I probably need more sleep to be able to talk about that. So luckily, we invited Jenny Almqvist to come and tell us what's up next.
Jenny, please join us.
Jenny, you are regional developer for life science at the region Västra Götaland. First of all, before we ask you what's happening next, what do you think? How can Health Innovation West help us to develop this region when it comes to life science?
So, Life science is, as you know, one of the strengths in our area or in our region. And by that we mean that we both have an industry strength and an academic excellence and a big healthcare. So by creating a cluster, we can facilitate that the three sectors will work more close together. And we know by experience that that will provide regional development. We have that experience from other sectors, such as the mobility, automotive sector, and from the marine sector. And we also know that we have to do everything we can to prohibit that we work in silos. And I think that Health Innovation West is a great initiative for this.
Thank you. Can you help to explain how is this Health Innovation West, how are we organized?
Okay, so we have a steering group, and the steering group consists of the funding parties, and it's both from the academic, the healthcare, and the industry sector. And the role of the steering group is to guarantee that the operations of Health Innovation West will be in line and in harmony with operations of the major life science players in the region. And then we also have a very small operational group that has been working in the last half year with both what you have talked about and what we will talk about.
Thank you. And what's up next?
So there are three things up next. First, we are continuing to facilitate, get the working groups going, as just Magnus and Anders talked about. And we are also actively reaching out to other life science clusters in the Nordic region. We want to learn, we want to share experiences, and we want to identify common interests and opportunities together. And finally, we are working to see how we can fund this. We're reaching out to both the EU and to Vinnova.
And so funding, does it cost anything to join?
As for now, I will say that Health Innovation West is a facilitator. And the value of Health Innovation West is created by the time that all of us put in the cluster. So at this point, we're not talking about money, actually, we're talking about time. And I think that the value and the time that we all put together, that is what will create the future together.
Thank you, Jenny. I mean, you heard it. It's all about working together. And if we all roll up our sleeves and get things done, there's a good chance of us being successful. I think I'll just carry on here because I know we're running a little bit late. And Magnus, we've talked for a long time now, right?
It's all about time, isn't it?
Yeah.
So we have actually talked for more than an hour about the concept of Health Innovation West, and I think you all get what it is. It's all about all of us joining up. We can't afford to think small, we need to think big. And in thinking big, we have two good guests with us that represents thinking big. Yeah. And that's Erik Gatenholm, who is one of the founders and the CEO of Cellink. And we also have Kristina Lagerstedt from 1928 Diagnostics. And we have them on link, I think, or video even.
Yes, exactly. These two very homegrown companies stemming with their roots in the local academics. I met them the other day, and let's hear from them on how do you make companies prosper and stay in Sweden so that they really grow here and are still here in 10 to 15 years from now.
What is required for you and your companies to scale up and to grow and to prosper in this region and really to while remaining active in this region?
So I think that it's really important to scale what really made this happen. And from the 1928 point of view, it's the collaborations that we had early on that made things happen with research for Chalmers University of Technology as well as Sahlgrenska University Hospital, and to increase and maintain these collaboration and partnerships at many different levels.
Thank you, Kristina. And Erik, when I spoke to you the other day, you mentioned that there is one particular thing that is absolutely on top of mind for you, and that was related to scale up. Can you tell me a bit about that?
Gladly. So thank you so much for having us. Of course, it's a pleasure to be here. I think that one thing we're talking about is of course revenue. Right? I mean, you have to build your revenue, you have to scale your company and bring in essentially dollars, right? Because at the end of the day, you got to pay employees, you got to pay your vendors, suppliers, you got to continue to build the organization. And I think that, if I look at the region, we're extremely thankful for the support that we've received, both from a national perspective, but also from a regional perspective. As you mentioned, we are a university spun out company. Our focus has been to bring a novel medical technology and innovation essentially to a global market. And we've done that by always thinking globally, right? And what that entails is that we have to surround ourselves with people who also think globally. And I think a great benefit has been the universities and the educational institutions around in this area. They've provided us with excellent people who, who've been able to help us to grow this organization forward. But at the end of the day, it's coming down to the revenue and the customers, and how do you continue to serve these customers from all different types of perspectives. So from our scale up phase, I can remember, and these go in multiple different phases, right? You go from complete startup or innovative technology where you have to essentially validate these new innovations with customers, all the way to the first sale, the first 10 sales, the first 100 sales, and then bringing in 10 people, 20 people, 50 people, 100 people. So I see things more in phases, but whichever phase you're in, there are certain required there's a certain required infrastructure that you need to rely on, and I think having so many universities around yourselves here in this region is a major benefit. From a regional perspective, collaborations, they go up and down, right? Typically in the med tech or life sciences field, collaborations are typically dependent on some kind of government financing, grants, soft funding. And I think one thing that this region has been very good at is to provide early stage startups and innovation companies with funding at a very, very early stage, right? You can get financing when you have an idea. And then you can explore that idea, and it can be debt financing, or it can be some grants, or whatever it is. And I think that is of course a crucial factor for success. In terms of the collaborations with universities, they become as good as you make them, right? It takes two to tango, and if you want to have a good collaboration with local schools, you got to reach out for it. You got to make yourself relevant. You got to offer something in return. And I think that from that perspective, we have been very successful, both here locally, regionally, nationally, but also globally.
As Eric said, we are also had the feeling of being global from start, traveling a lot and so on all over the globe. And we also have a lot of interest from outside of Sweden to join the company. And then we need it to be easy for them to come here. For instance, senior people who has families, so that the system, when it comes to education, putting their kids in school, and also for the spouses, etc., to easily get a new job. And I think there are very good functions. For instance, if you are a doctor coming to a hospital, and then there is some help for them from within the hospital organization, and we would very much want the same, to get help and have a very positive feeling of getting talent from outside, and also to have a good educational system for them, because of course it's important to have a good place where you feel that you will have the same standards as you can have anywhere in a good hub anywhere in the world.
Eric, anything that you would like to add on this topic? And you have business, you have an office as well in the US, as well as in Gothenburg and in other places around the world. Does it differ in terms of talent attraction, or do you think that we have a sufficient support system for it?
It's a great question, and I think as an American, I can be the testament of kind of what Christina is saying. In the U.S., we have a different mindset for entrepreneurship. We we embrace it in a different way, right? I mean, it's very well embraced in Sweden as well, and is being highlighted by the royal family, and I've myself been part of Prince Daniel's Fellowship. It's been a fantastic program, highly recommended. But there's still a lot of things that can be done, right? In terms of tax structures and financing for relocations and things like that. I'm not sure how much I would be asking our government for support. I mean, it's kind of it's more of a matter of if I see a talent that I really need, and I bring that talent from abroad, I will most likely pay those costs, and it's kind of out of necessity. But of course, something that we're seeing now as we're scaling tremendously is housing, and I never thought that housing would be that big of a conversation, right? But all of a sudden, housing is a major challenge. So we're bringing people from India, from the U.S., from the UK, Italy. I mean, all corners of the world, and we can't really offer them any sustainable housing situations, which essentially creates it's a major challenge. And of course, you'll figure all of these things out if you're an entrepreneur. But the question is just what kind of experience and what kind of customer service per se do your employees perceive in such situation or scenario, right? So you always want to have a nice figured out situation. Everybody's very warm and welcoming, and I think this region is doing a lot of work in improving that, right? So the Gothenburg region has a few offices or programs working with expats. They've prepared a lot of information, and they're being a lot more proactive. And so I think I'm quite happy to see those projects taking place.
Moving on, I'd like you to think about other countries, and Erik, I'd like to turn to you. Other countries where successful cluster collaboration is very prominent. Of course, you have an office in Boston, and Boston is, for all of us, known as one of the world leading cluster and hubs for life science, both research and industry. And there are others, Cambridge, where AstraZeneca moved their headquarters to. But also closer, if we look at Norway, they've been extremely successful, especially in the oncology side, to establish themselves as a world-leading cluster. What do you see in those clusters that we can learn from in West Sweden, and what are the prerequisites that absolutely need to be there?
It's a great question, and I could probably dedicate the next 2 days answering that question. but I think, as you're saying, Boston, Cambridge, both U.S. Cambridge, but also UK Cambridge. San Francisco is a big hub for biotech. The Research Triangle on the East Coast down south. These are all great areas for biotech, but first of all, these are places where biotech and life sciences has grown for many years. So they have a first mover advantage, and that's for that reason you have large pharmaceutical companies that have moved or established their presence in these areas, which has been a major driving force, right? I think for this region right here. I think one benefit is, of course, having large pharma companies or biotech companies establish themselves, some kind of presence, not just administration, finance, or accounting. You need actual research and development taking place in this area to successfully get a sustainable community. I said it before, I'm going to say it again. Revenue for us it's a driver, right? We follow the money, and that's what you have to do as an entrepreneur. Otherwise, you're going to be finding yourselves in situations where you're spending a lot of time working on pro bono projects, which might be exciting for future development, but might not bring in the money to pay your people or build your company. So from that perspective, we have to find customers and find opportunities in this region. And from that perspective, AstraZeneca, a major driver, right? The universities are major drivers. And I think that there are a lot of things that are taking place at this time. I think there are great customers up in Uppsala as well. I mean, around KI, KTH, these universities are great hubs as well. But I think one of the major driving forces is really going to be how many of these larger corporations can we attract to this area, and how much of their development could we subsidize to this area so that the smaller biotech or life sciences companies could tie themselves to their network and be an integral part of their development.
Christina, you mentioned when we talked that pride, being proud of your community around you and talking about both industries and academic institutions and healthcare institutions is something that you see in other clusters as being absolutely crucial, and of course here. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yes, of course, I find that very important and have a very strong feeling of we. And I also can add to what Eric just said. I mean, because it comes to, we have a very good startup opportunity here, and we need to build it to facilitate scaling as well. And then funding is key. And as Eric said, I totally agree. We also have a lot of, the majority of our big funders and investors are from the region or Sweden, but most of them from the West Coast, actually. And they want to see examples on collaboration, and also examples when you scale your collaboration. If you can find that also locally, that is a very strong sense of confidence that is attractive. And then if we can scale that by such an initiative like we have here. But I think the way to do it is exactly as you said, you can have pitch competitions, and you can have different activities and events, because it's about meeting more and more often to get to know other stakeholders within the academia, companies, big corporates such as AstraZeneca and Chalmers as being an institute, but also with the hospitals.
Yeah, so this we feeling of being we and togetherness and how we can get a little bit closer to what has been created in the ICT and mobility industry, that is really what our hope is with Health Innovation West, is to get closer to one another. So that's great. Finally, I'd like to dwell on the question of daring. You have both talked about this a lot, that sharing is great, but in a collaboration, it's not just about sharing; it's also about daring. Who wants to go first on this one?
I mean, I could just connect it to what we just talked about, because it's about when you gave the example, Eric, from the US, where entrepreneurship is really very, very what everything is about, right? And that's, I think, where we differ a little bit. You need to dare to be we together with the companies, both from the hospital and healthcare perspective, and to do things together. And that's where I think such an initiative as Health Innovation West is really, really important. You need to create areas and events and structures for us to meet, because it's a little bit slower here. We just don't jump on and make things happen together and brag about what we do. We need to be more brave to really do that, because that's what we need. Then we could do things much faster. And it's also faster and much more efficient to do it locally where you are. It's much faster to build those kind of relationships. But we need to dare to do it. We need a little bit more time. Then we need to find the places to meet, so that the span in time will decrease and it will happen faster. We love fast.
Eric, do you like?
I couldn't agree more. Speed is crucial. You know, for daring, it's all about finding the opportunities with local partners and companies and universities. And I think, you know, looking back at it, U.S. is typically where new innovation and new trends are born due to the fact that it's, you know, to dare is part of the culture. And I think that we could learn a lot from that. I think we could implement more of that here. And perhaps not just on the company level, it's perhaps in the universities too, right? Because I mean, a lot of these researchers, they typically they look for what other economies or other researchers in different regions around the world are doing, and then they're adopting either that technique and saying, oh, this is a well-published study or a well-published technology, I will start utilizing it. But I think we could learn from other nations and regions as well to be a little bit more daring and say, perhaps we don't need to try only the very well-tested methods. Let's go out of our comfort zone. Let's think outside of the box. Let's use some of these local innovations and let's be the first ones to publish, right? And take pride in being the first, because I think that goes a long way.
Yeah, I can.
Thank you.
You go. No, I mean, there are already examples of this that we have experienced, and I think there are many different initiatives as well. And for instance, with the University of Skövde here in the region, they are very brave, I must say, and worked with us early on, as of course with Sahlgrenska University Hospital. Without them, we would never been able to try out our software for transmission analysis of bacteria spread and so on. And also there are other initiatives like the specialist education for doctors here in Gothenburg, where there actually is a special track where you can have a course in technology and innovation. And part of that is being, spending some weeks together with companies, which is a great initiative and will create a very good environment for entrepreneurship for the future when it becomes a part of how you work in general.
I have a question for you both. If we sit here again in 2035, will we expect to talk to you as representatives of companies that are still present in this region?
Yeah, I believe so. I strongly believe that this region has a chance to become a leader in life sciences and provide the crucial and essential resources for local companies to thrive. We have, since the start, we have manufacturing here, global support, we have sales, marketing, management, we have financial support. We have all functions located in Gothenburg, and I think from that perspective, we don't see any downside of it. We want to see future growth and scale up, and I think we're in discussions with local partners to create that future for ourselves. I think from that perspective, we're quite happy to continue to scale up.
Kristina, how about you?
Yeah, I totally agree with Eric. We will definitely stay in this area. But with that said, we're also a global company, but so we are and will be at other places as well. But to have Gothenburg as our own hub, especially with initiatives such as yours, which will facilitate to grow here as well. I look forward to it.
So do I. Thank you both for joining us today, and let's get this party started together.
Thanks for having us. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Wow. So all of the big ones out there, the hospital, the universities, AstraZeneca, Getinge, watch out, because those two companies are going to need a lot of more staff in the years to come. So I'm very glad to say we think we will have them and many others to grow here in the future. We've got some questions and comments in the chat. So before ending up, let's look at some of the questions and comments. There is a question that I think is good for you to take a look at, Magnus. So there is a lot of initiatives going on in Sweden. How do we secure that they are coordinated?
How do we secure? I don't think it's about we, it's about us. Imagine what we have in a neighborhood which is not further away than from Boston to New York. We have Max 4 in the south, we have Scilaf Lab, we have Testa Center, we have the BioHub here in Gothenburg, all the universities, we have the Norwegian, the cancer cluster in Oslo, all cool stuff that goes on in the Copenhagen area. Imagine if we could join forces and think as one body in how we excel with all the skills we have. So I think we all have a responsibility to secure that we align. It's not up on one single organization or one single person to do that. So it's a plea to all of you out there. We need to work together to make this happen. That is my simple answer to that question.
Well, I would agree, and as we said before, we've reached out to other clusters in the Nordics, and every time we've talked to anyone, it's been we've been met with open arms, and I think that is a testament to what you just said. There was a comment as well in the chat, someone commenting on the interview with Erik and Christina, or the discussion with Erik and Christina, where they really highlight the need for all the infrastructure around. Apart from building a cluster, if you want to attract talent, you also need to have that function around it. And business does follow the money, both investments and sales, was a comment and a quote, which I think is quite good, and I think everything follows one another, right?
No, and I think in Sweden it's sometimes ugly to talk about profits and commercial aspects of what we do, but if it don't become commercial, it doesn't reach patients either. So I think we shouldn't shy away from that dimension in, shaping this going forward. It's super critical.
And on that, there was another question, which is a little bit controversial. In Sweden, we have, I don't know what we call it in English, lärarundantaget, forskarundantaget. So the ability or the right for a researcher, they own the right to their own innovation. And the question was, is that a means, a positive means or a hurdle?
How much time do we have?
No, I don't know, but I think this is something we could dwell on. We can see a booming amount of startup companies, but we also need to be proud of all of that and work closely together with those companies.
This is not planned, just so you know, but I think we probably have a world record in startups. But if you look on scale-ups in the Nordic region, there are not that many. We heard 2 today, but there are far more startups that never become more than startups. So I think you could perhaps get more support from the universities if you were to adjust lärarundantaget, teacher's exemption, to some extent. But this is a very hot discussion, and I have my personal view on it, and so have you. So I don't think we have time to that, but I wish it was discussed.
So keep the discussions going. That's what we're asking. We're just throwing it out there for all of you to join in. And again, it is a website which is full of information, and post this event we will post the report that Jonas presented from Triathlon, and we will also post the links that Iris referred to and other links that has been mentioned
about
throughout
sleeping
this.
revenge disorders. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. That was a good one. So let's give everyone a quick recap. I mean, we talked a lot and we've heard a lot.
Yeah,
Can you summarize things?
Well, we can do it jointly, I think, Mia. So we talked about what life science is about in context of Health Innovation West, which is all about harnessing the power of togetherness between industry, large and small, and academia and healthcare providers. And it's all about further strengthening the area of life science in Sweden.
And remember, we looked at the market analysis that inspired the creation of Health Innovation West.
Yes, and we took a look at the 3 working groups that now have kicked off. And here I think it's given the COVID situation, I'm impressed by the work done by the hospital. On top of everything they are doing, they have been helping us out with this as well. So,
yeah. Let's not forget that they've done all of this in the middle of a pandemic. And we took a look at the model, and we realized that the more the merrier, and we need that, and we can become stronger together.
Yes, and Erik told us about that we can never have too many innovation support systems. That's important.
And we've been blown away by your energy, Magnus. And there's been some good discussions and comments on the chat, but let's keep that going. Before we leave, I think there is time to thank a lot of people here, right?
Yes, it is.
And maybe we should start with the ones behind Health Innovation West. There's been a lot of work done there.
Yes, and I mean, we have Getinge, we have Sahlgrenska Hospital, we have the university, we have Chalmers, we have Business Region Gothenburg, we have, of course, AstraZeneca and the BioVentureHub, we have the region VGR, SSP, not at least GoCo, where we are today, borrowing their facilities to do this broadcast. And we also have the one who actually started this.
Yeah, Mölndal stad. So the city of Mölndal, not to be forgotten here. Carina Klok Malmsten, who initiated the whole idea of let's talk to each other with a number of big meetings about 1.5, 2 years ago. So a call out to you, Carina, and to the city of Mölndal, who kicked us all off in this. And it's also time to thank, of course, we said thank you for GoCo for keeping us here. And to everybody behind the scenes, a special call out to Jamie Smith, who's been the producer of this event and who's also the communication support for Health Innovation West. And to the Chicana team, who's been taking us through the technical requirements of today. So Fabian, Linus, Tony, and the rest of the team, thank you. And last but not least, thank you to all of you who's been watching today. We enjoyed having you on the other side of the camera. We hope to meet you soon again, physically, as well as digitally.
And don't forget to thank yourself, or I can do it. I mean, you have put a lot of time into making this happen, Mia, so big thanks.
Thank you to you. As we say in Swedish, tackar som tackar. And last but not least, we're recording this. So if you know someone who should really look at this, then again, the website is healthinnovationwest.se, and we'll put the link up there, and it'll also be on social media.
Good, and join us on the highway to health.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.